Have you heard of Frederick Place in London? Most of you will never have heard of it, but it's the place where you found the haunted Cobblestone, and also where the lady lived that came back from the grave. So stay tuned. So welcome back to the Brac Shop, and I'm Tom from the shop. And this episode has been requested by Faeyrie. In fact, Faeyrie's requested a few other episodes like Ham House and also Handel's House. And in this episode, she wanted to know about the haunted Cobblestone. So here it is. And don't forget, if you have a request, please let me know and I'll do my best to see if I can bring it to you as well. Now, just as a reminder, if you do like these episodes, and especially this episode, please click the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and click the bell so you'll be notified every time I do launch another video, because YouTube doesn't always notify you when a new episode comes out. But if you click the bell, it definitely will. So welcome if this is your first time. And don't forget, I've now got a shop. So click on the link below that I'll put and have a look at the shop. And Frederick Place in London. Now this is Frederick Place. Now this was named after John Frederick, who was a mayor of London in the 1600s. And a couple of famous people used to live here as well. Coming up on our right. Now this is the building where Edwin Waterhouse used to work. Now he was one of the accountants that started Price Waterhouse, the famous accounting firm, which later became Price Waterhouse Coopers. And on the other side of the road, we have the building where Benjamin Disraeli used to work. Back in the early 1800s. He later went on to become Prime Minister of the nation twice, under the reign of Queen Victoria. Now, doing my research from Richard Jones, who is a paranormal ghost tour guide, says that in this street, in one of these houses, he's not sure which one, but he probably thinks it's this house here. This is where a tea merchant used to live. And one day, unfortunately, he found his wife dead. And so naturally, he had her buried in the nearby church of St.Gilles, Cripplegate. And if you can imagine the church back then, you would have actually had the gardens on the side and the graves on the side here as well. Now he wanted her to be dressed in her wedding gown and to be buried, obviously, with her wedding ring. And so she was buried. However, the church warden also noticed all of this as well. So after she was buried, around midnight on the night, him and his wife, they got up and started redigging the grave to steal the wedding ring. So they got her hand up and they were trying to get the wedding ring off and they couldn't. So they got out a knife to start to cut her finger off. And that is when she woke up. And she gave a big scream and scared them away. Now, she finally came to and realized where she was. And back in those days, no electricity or anything, so they had lamps beside them. But they ran off, leaving the lamps behind. So she grabbed the lamp and walked through the streets of London back to her home. Now, she was suffering from narcolepsy, and that's a state where someone will seem as if they're almost dead. It's where their heartbeat and their breathing has slowed down so much that you can't actually tell that they're still alive. And so a lot of people actually were buried alive, only to wake up in their coffins. And so this woman came back from the grave to the house. And these things actually happened quite a bit, because it's a very similar story to another case that happened up in Edinburgh in Scotland. Now, the 1800s, and in Scotland, in Edinburgh at the time, it was so common for grave robbers, or body snatchers as they were called, to steal the bodies from the grave and sell them to the hospitals, because the hospitals were actually paying good money for the bodies, so they can actually dissect the bodies and experiment and learn more about the body, which at that stage in the 1800s was all very taboo. It was disrespectful, and you didn't do that to a dead body. So bodies were a bit hard to come by, and that was the way they used to get their bodies to experiment on. Now, a very similar case in Edinburgh at the time, which actually changed medical law. This lady was buried in Edinburgh, and these grave robbers had dug up her grave, and he actually had a lot of jewelry on her body. And the thing was that wasn't really against the law to steal a body, but it was against the law to steal the jewelry. So, not to go against the law, they would steal the bodies and leave all the jewelry behind. And so they were doing this with this lady, and they were taking off her rings. And again, the ring couldn't come off her finger, so they took a knife to cut her finger off. And that's when she woke up and gave them such a fright, and they ran away, and she managed to be revived. So in a way, it was a good thing that they dug her up, because she was able to live. However, this incident was taken to the courts, and this started a whole new set of medical classifications to say that you were dead. So they wouldn't just bury you because you didn't wake up. They had to prove you were dead. So this is very similar to the lady in Frederick Street that came back from the grave. Now, the haunted Cobblestone. Now you can see that the street is very nicely paved, but you have these darkened squares, probably to represent what it used to be like when it was a cobbled street. And when it was a cobbled street, you could, dig the dirt away around it and take stones away. Now, on a walking tour that Richard Jones was doing, he's a ghost tour guide and gives ghost tours, and he brought his walking tour to this spot. And apparently one night, one of the members from his group actually took one of the stones home. And that's when they noticed strange things happening in their house. For 2 weeks, they only had the stone for 2 weeks, but they noticed they could hear a young girl's voice around the place, and then footsteps going up the stairs. And it was really strange things happening until the end of the second week. Things got so crazy that one night they heard things going on in the upstairs room, and then a lot of commotion and crashing. So they went up and had a look, and they couldn't get the door open. So they went up and had a look. They went into the room, but they couldn't because the door was stuck. And they managed to get the door open, only to find that a cupboard had fallen down, blocking the doorway. So they managed to get in, but that wasn't the only thing, because that could be a coincidence. Apparently, the whole room was trash. Things were thrown around, paintings pulled off the walls, and that's when they decided to take the stone back. So they called up Richard Jones and asked where Frederick Place was so they could take the stone back. And we didn't hear any more from them, so we can say, hopefully, that everything settled down after returning the stone back. So what do you think caused it? Write your comments down below. It'd be interesting to hear what you think. Now, I have a theory that things pick up on people's energies. And this is like personal items, but it also gets to the extent that like larger places like houses can pick up energies on what has gone on before. And probably the same with streets. Like a lot of Jack the Ripper's victims where they were murdered. Apparently people have seen apparitions. And because the impact, the emotional impact has been so strong that it's been imprinted in the surroundings. So what do you think could have happened here when that person took the stone home? Do you think they took a bit of the energy from the place home? And a little girl running around. What energy could that stone have picked up, do you think? Maybe this was where the little girl spent a lot of time, so her emotional energy was imprinted in the pavement around the place. However, 2 weeks later in someone's house, and the thrashing of the room might have a different idea that it might not have been a very pleasant experience. So maybe she was hit by a car or even a carriage, depending on how old the spirit is. And that's been imprinted in the stone. And this is what they took home. What do you think? As we can see, the road has been paved. And so those cobblestones may not be the original cobblestones that were there 100 years ago, or even 200 years ago. Because as we know, roadworks, they always pave on top. And over time, the road actually gets higher and higher. There's a police station on the other side of the world, actually, in Sydney, Australia, where people say they hear noises in the basement. But 200 years ago, when it was built, that was actually the ground floor. It's just that the road has risen up over the years. That's now the basement. So where did those cobblestones come from? Were they originally made cobblestones? Were they brought in from somewhere else? And did they bring the energy from somewhere else? Or maybe it was a new spirit and they did pick up the energy from Frederick Place. What do you think? Let me know. So this is Frederick Place. Not a very big place, quite small, very historic and interesting. So what do you think? Write your comments below and let me know, and it'll be interesting to see what you think about the haunted cobblestones and objects retaining people's energies. And if you've liked this episode, as I've said, do click the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed as yet, and if you like our videos and you don't want to miss out, please click the bell. And so you'll be notified for when I send out another one. Another thank you to Faeyrie for requesting to know about the haunted cobblestone. And don't forget, if you have any requests, do let me know. And if I can find out more about it, visit it, research it, I'll do my best to bring it to you. And the shop is open. There's not much in the shop. I'm still stocking it up. And if you have any requests of what you would like to see in the shop, put in the comments below and I'll see if I can get them in. At the moment, we're promoting the energizer shirts, colors of the chakras, because the colors will help to influence you and unblock and realign your chakras and get them working. And at the moment, we have a special discount offer. And also, it includes shipping and tax as well. So do take advantage of the offer. So, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Click the like button, subscribe, press the bell, and hopefully I'll see you soon. So until then, stay well and happy.